Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a great new review for you from the brand Seiko. Of course, they were founded back in 1888. They are Japanese of origin, but now have factories throughout Asia. Fun fact about Seiko that makes them pretty unique is that they cover all market segments, from extremely entry level to also extremely high end. Now, for this particular type of watch, it's of course a dive watch. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for a dive watch, you're going to want typically some water resistance through a screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet, which this model in particular is on a really fantastic silicone rubber strap, which I'm really enjoying. But I will also sneak in a little bracelet option for you guys by the end of the video, so definitely stay tuned for that. This is their Prospex Street Series SBDY073, and it's essentially a more casual take on their very popular professional diver that's been dubbed the Tuna, which has been around forever. The nice thing here is you're actually getting a much more affordable and attainable option. You're still getting, of course, in-house everything. You're getting a hacking hand windable mechanical movement. With an automatic winding rotor as well. So you're getting a lot for your money, and it's under 500 bucks. You could get this actually for $491 from Sakura Watches like I did. And I think this thing's nice. Although it is a 43.2 millimeter diameter, technically it's kind of this, until just recently they came out with a slightly smaller one that is meant to be more of a his and hers kind of combo pack that's solar. This is the smallest Tuna, at least smallest mechanical Tuna, and some might even feel it's too small just because of the near lugless design. I mean, the lug to lug on here is very, very short at just 43.8 millimeters. So this thing wears quite small, but it's really nice. And honestly, these types of watches are typically in that 45, 47 range, and even larger in terms of their diameter, because they're essentially just a little circle puck that sits on your wrist. So when it's not a little circle puck, it elongates and stretches out the case, and it makes you feel a little bit bigger. Here you're getting a dive time bezel, and then you're even getting a shroud around that, and then you're getting the dial is on the inside of that with a slope chapter ring, so it shrinks things down quite a bit. The nice thing is you guys have actually seen pretty much the same case profile on the channel already with the Urban Safari line, which I reviewed, which I'll also bring into camera here in a few. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, this thing's outstanding. Let's face it, blue and gold is a great look. It's a very pale gold, which makes it quite versatile. It will really suit those kinds of khaki tones, and then you even do get a bit of I don't want to say patina, but just a little warmer hue to the lume, which actually does tie in and feel a bit golden and warmer versus compared to, let's say, this guy right here, which had a cooler tone, which, as you can see here, is going to render more of kind of a whitish, maybe with a green tint. Here you're getting more of a warmer kind of ivory tint, but again, not really meant to be patina, more so meant to just be some level of color play. Another difference is you're going to see here this really great steel insert, which has been coated. You do also get that lume pip protection with a nice little piece of hardlex there. Here, this is going to be a resin one, which was nice because you do get the additional graduations being able to glow in lume, but other than that, and also the dial, you can see just a date here versus a day date. But these are both made in Japan models. Although I believe this model is available internationally. I don't know about if this one is yet. Basically, it'll garner a new nomenclature for international sales. But it's the same fit, but you do get a different strap. This one of my main things that were, I guess, kind of lacking on it is the fact that it doesn't really taper. It steps out and then comes back to 20. Here, you actually do get a nice taper. It's 20 millimeters, but then it's tapers down to 18, which I love. And you can see very similar though in terms of the buckle and whatnot. This is just a wider buckle, 18 versus 20 there. So in terms of if we get the camera to focus, so in terms of you know, comfortable on the wrist, taper is always going to be nice. But this model, you guys seen, I wear this a lot, and it is quite monochromatic, but I feel like this kind of slate gray does have some cool kind of blue hues in it, which works in its favor. But with this kind of you know, this DLC coating here, it can be a little bit polarizing. It looks very tactical, very sporty. Here you're getting something a little bit more traditional, not necessarily in the dial and bezel insert combination, but the actual you know, in the case being just exposed steel there, which I think looks great. Now in terms of the fitment on here, of course, we're going to have a 43.2 millimeter width, and then you're going to have a 13 millimeter thickness, and that does include this little protruding emblem here on the case back. So it's actually probably closer to 12 and a half. You know, realistically, not counting the emblem, but at its highest points, yes, it's going to be 13 millimeters. The lug to lug is really, really small at just 43.8, so only slightly longer versus how wide it is in terms of the lug to lug there. It's all stainless steel, mostly brushed, but you do have some polished points here, as you can see on the top of the shroud, and little accent here and there on the crown, and then of course on the case back itself you do get some nice polished features. So in terms of the crystal, it is a Hardlex crystal, which is technically mineral, but this is proprietary to Seiko. So it's not just your basic mineral crystal. This is something that is particularly, you know, resistant to scratching and shattering. And honestly, there was a long time that Seiko just had a lot of watches that were quite expensive that didn't have sapphire crystals because they were so confident in Hardlex. They still are, but they understand that the market has really, you know, just went all in on sapphires. So we're starting to see those on some of their more expensive options. But here within this under $500 range, I think a Hardlex is totally fine. And honestly, I like having that Hardlex because it does save money as well. Now, this bezel here is rotating in 120 clicks. Ooh. The action is fantastic. Ooh, lines up great. Yeah, let's do that again. It's not the tightest, but I love that it's just a great balance between smooth and notchy. So this thing moves really well, and it gives you a tactile little tick, tick, tick. The notchiness is beautifully dialed in. So as a functional piece here, this is absolutely very usable in terms of being a timing bezel. Beautiful. All right. I think the color play is also quite handsome. It's a very deep, dark blue dial, as you can see, and those kind of wheat-like gold tones, very pale, very nice, do suit the watch really, really well. So you get that 120 click bezel. You do have a screw down crown. It's nicely tucked into the shroud there. It is not signed. The movement inside is a Seiko 4R36, which is hacking and hand windable. The case back is solid and stamped with some etching around there, of course. You know, all the great trappings you'd look for. Divers 200 meters, made in Japan, all that jazz. Very nicely done. And then when you get down to the dial, of course, you're going to get nicely applied indices. You're going to get that nice blue sunray dial. And then you're going to get the date nestled in between the 4 and the 5 o'clock, right? That 4.5, which I think is nice. It's not too distracting because they're using a black date disc with the white font, so it ties in. It's not too disruptive. I did enjoy this model with the day date, but I know that Seiko's really kind of moving away from not having a Lume plop at the 3 o'clock. So we're going to start seeing them offset or basically do kind of mini, which you'll actually see on some models they've actually updated that didn't have that, now have that in the later production runs. And they didn't really announce they were doing that. It's just something that they changed. So that's something which is nice in terms of low light visibility and legibility. You're going to have basically all your indices there to work with, which is always nice. As well as really helps with orientation. We do have brushed hands, and then Seiko Lume throughout. One thing I will note is that this is the newer Lume that glows blue. I don't know if there's any benefits to that, but I do notice that some of Seiko's new Lume, it will either be blue or it'll be the traditional green. In this case, this is the blue, which I like, and it's a blue watch. As you can see on the dial there, of course, this is a diver's watch that does meet ISO standards because it does bear the diver's 200 meters text there across the dial, so it meets or exceeds those ISO standards to carry that text. The strap on here is fantastic. It honestly reminds me a lot of that really nice, very honestly expensive strap that comes on the SBDC watches that are around $1,200. A different texture on here, as I might even say a little bit, more sedate and understated, which people are into. It does also have nice texture on the back. The one place I will say where the cost saving kind of shows a little bit is in the buckle, because you don't get the the fancier buckle that you're going to see on those SBDC models, but it is still signed underneath here. And you can see very nice. Also great hardware, nicely chamfered, beveled with the high polish, with the beautiful brushing there as well. So this thing is quite a looker. This silicone polymer strap is just really, really nice. It tapers down to 18 millimeters, again, like I mentioned, and I dig that, and it's great on wrist. So let's actually get this piece on wrist and show you how it wears. All right, guys, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears perfectly. Honestly, with just a wristy here, it probably looks just about perfect, but in real life, I'd say it does actually appear visually just a touch on the small side. Again, it doesn't seem undersized, but it does wear a touch small just because of the nature of this layout and this setup and this style of watch. And that's why the much larger traditional mechanical tunas have been so popular. It's because they wear smaller. So, even their 45 plus and 47 and up sizes, a lot of people love them because they wear great. And this one is much smaller, but I'd say it wears more like a 40 millimeter, even though, guys, this is a 43 millimeter watch. It wears a lot like a 40, like my SBDC 101, very similar in terms of scale on that. But you can see, sits really nicely on the wrist. This band requires no break-in whatsoever. Very nice. I do like, there's the little indentations here, adds a little bit of visual play. I think it's very nice. I think it looks very good. But one thing with a 20 millimeter lug width that you get to do is you could put on, a nice bracelet as well. And some of you are probably thinking, oh, well, let me get a strap code N-Mil or something like that, which I've done on other kind of Tuna mods, with like the Tuna Light mod for my Prospex solar powered Tuna. But in this case, I kind of wanted to go even more of an OEM plus look because I feel like you get so much visual punch from the color play with this model. So what I did is I actually picked up this bracelet that comes from, I believe it's the first gen Monster, with the nomenclature on this bracelet is 49X8JG or 49 X-ray 8 Juliet Golf, and it has a 20 millimeter width, which, but one thing I like is that it actually steps out after that, which can help give it just a little bit more visual punch. So although this does wear a bit small, especially with the straight ends here, which I love this, honestly. I'm sure I'm going to get some life out of this strap, but I think this one will spend some time on this bracelet because with that little step out, it actually helps it wear really nice as well, and you'll see that. So let me go ahead and do some magic with the camera here, get it going, and then get this bracelet on. All right, check that out. Yes, I think that looks gorgeous, and you can see that little step just makes all the difference there. It just steps out slightly outside of the 22, I'm sorry, out of the 20 millimeter width there at the lugs, takes it about to 23 millimeters, and it makes a difference. It just helps the watch flow a little bit better, and it gives it a bit more wrist presence as well, which I really dig. And you know, typically I like a deeper taper than what you're gonna see here, but I think with this style of watch, similar to, let's say, like an Oris, right? For that type of layout where you're gonna have kind of that porthole style watch, you don't necessarily have to go with a deeper taper, especially when it's something that's quite sporty. I do love the links on here. So you can see there's just that little undercut of polish, which adds some more visual play. Also, you know, you're getting a factory dive extension there. Everything feels like a Seiko, and yeah, you can't get mad at that. I think this feels great. It doesn't feel like it's too nice for the watch. You know, I wouldn't say it takes it to another level like it would maybe if it was like an aftermarket bracelet or something like that, but I do feel like this gives it a feeling of completion and just a different vibe from that standpoint. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. You guys digging it on this steel bracelet? Again, going for that OEM plus look. I think, considering that the Monster stole the Tuna shroud in a few different iterations in those kind of Tuna Monster divers from a couple years ago, I think it's nice for the Tuna to borrow a little bit as well and get this beautiful and quite iconic to Seiko Monster bracelet. Yeah, I think this thing looks fantastic on the metal, but let's actually get to some Lume shots. Low light transition. As you guys can see, this thing just sits beautifully on the wrist. Oh man, love this thing. All right, yeah, so Lume shots, low light transition coming right up. All right, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, you get that blue Lume. Very interesting, but I dig it. It's still LumeBright. It still does and acts like LumeBright, and it's still really, really well applied like LumeBright, because that's exactly what it is, boys. So one thing I also do like to work in to these reviews is a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight, which my hot studio lights do a really good job of rendering. A lot of the times you're going to be coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, etc., even spending time out in your favorite vehicle. Now, as you can see, even in this transitional lighting, man, that LumeBright's still kicking in, even in kind of some of the mixed lighting there, still quite legible. You can see the blues play really well. Very deep dark navy there, and then the nice thing is you even get some color play because of the textures that have been kind of etched in to that bezel insert there. And then if we get down to some very high contrast harsher lighting, which typically will expose things like any inconsistencies or defects in the finish. You can see everything just glides nicely over the brushing on this watch. Very, very nice. And some of you are thinking, oh well, all Seiko Lume looks kind of bluish when you put it on camera. So just for comparison's sake, see this right here is some more traditional Lume. You can see the green versus the blue. So yes, they are different, and yes, that green can render quite bluish when cameras are color correcting. But you can see side by side, blue green, green Lume. Bam, wham bam, thank you, officer. So we'll go ahead and get that one out of the way. But it's really cool to see this guy have that, of course, that very cool Lume to bezel insert there. And then, of course, now it's not going to want to focus. Ugh, there we go. So very cool. Didn't have this one charged up or anything, but yeah, quite handsome. And I knew that this one would wear well because it's the same case and whatnot. So let's actually go ahead, get the lights back on, and get into some closing thoughts. So on the wrist, guys, this thing, of course, wears more like a 40. Have to get that out there for you guys, just because I know some of you are still hesitant to buy a watch that's like 43 millimeters, almost 44 at 43.8. But guys, this thing wears like a 40, maybe even a 39. Honestly, it wears a lot smaller. A lot of people. I have a 7.25 inch wrist, but I would say even people that have the same size wrist as me might find it small. No, not undersized and not unwearably small, but I think surprisingly small in person. So in terms of model variants, there's the SBDY075, which is the green dial. There's also the SBDY089, which is the black dial. And then there's the SBDY091, which is the black dial, but it also has a black case. And that one's really cool too. They all kind of have this gold tone color palette as well, so those accents are still going to be kind of on the golden side, but I think they look great, so can't get too mad at that. In terms of comparable models, guys, I mean, when it comes to the Tuna, there's either the Tuna or there's not, and at this point there's honestly like a lot of mechanical Tuna homages out there. But the nice thing is Seiko is actually fulfilling that space as well. So of course I'd rather go straight to the source from that standpoint. But yeah, comparable models. For me, I compare this to other authentic Seiko Tunas that are much more expensive, and this is just a hell of a deal by comparison. So guys, for me, bottom line, this is another affordable mini auto Tuna, but this time in a more traditional, less polarizing layout. I think people generally like steel cases. They don't all want that DLC, although it looks great. It's nice to see this on steel. Then you can put it on a steel bracelet. It gives it more versatility. The blue dial, also excellent. Green dial, great. Black dial, great. But for me, that blue and gold play was just something kind of special and different. You guys know, I don't just bring in watches just for reviews. I buy a ton and I keep a ton. There are some loaners that do go back out into circulation to other reviewers, back to the brands, and whatnot. But for the most part, what you guys see, especially within my Seiko collection, are within my Seiko collection. This is a watch that I bought that I have the intention of wearing. And having some of those different color options give me a reason and an excuse to get another watch like this, just because I can wear it in other situations that I couldn't wear something similar. So with that said, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.